Hello, my dear friends. It's Danielle again, and we are talking today more specifically about what a teaching memoir is. And in my last video, I went through the two kind of main types of memoirs that really lend themselves to helping you push a mission forward. And we talked about the personal memoir, which is really just straight narrative. You're just focusing on your story. And then we talked about a teaching memoir, which is story based, of course. You're going to have a huge element of story in there, but it also allows you to step out of the storytelling mode and go into teaching mode. So it's like you're wearing two different hats, or maybe like one hat with two sides. Maybe it's reversible. I don't know. There's so many hats in the world. You can decide what you want to wear. How about that? So in today's video, we are going to dive deeper into a teaching memoir. And specifically, we're talking about structure. There are different ways that you can package your book. If you are really called to tell your story, but to utilize your story as an example, as an illustration of these big lessons that you learned along the way, and that you want to spend more time talking about outside of the story construct, okay? So there's different ways you can structure this. Not, again, you'll hear me say this, not one way is right or wrong, but there will be a way that works best for you and your story. You're just going to have to feel it out. So let's talk about a couple of the more common structures that you can look into. When dealing with, you're telling a story, but you're using your story to give us some instruction, to kind of teach us, show us, explain a little bit more, there may be something that allows you to kind of go step by step. Like first I had to learn this, and then I had to learn that, and then this. So step one, fill in the blank. Step two, fill in the blank. It's not going to be as explicit as that, but your story will be structured in a way that allows you to walk the readers step by step through the process of planning your circumnavigation of the world, or, leading up to the leaving your employment, your full-time employment, and starting your business. Maybe it was like step one, I had to get real serious about what I wanted to do. And you talk about these steps, but your story that you tell within those particular steps, if you will illustrate how you did those things. And then the teaching part of the process will expound upon maybe some of the, more practical guidance they need in order to take, for your readers to take into their own lives. It's like saying, here's how you do it. Let me show you by sharing my story. Kind of along the same lines is just chronology, just chronological. Things happen in a particular order for a reason, right? So it might just be like, well, this is how it unfolded, and this is what I learned along the way. That's perfectly fine. It does not have to be more complicated than that. We'll talk about how to break down, how to integrate the story and the teaching moments shortly, but just keep in mind that you can certainly tell your story chronologically, even within a teaching memoir. Typically that works quite well. That probably would help to eliminate any confusion if your readers are going, wait, did this happen first, or did this happen first? If that's something that might be important, or if you feel like could cause some confusion, then consider chronological structure for your teaching memoir. Another way to look at setting up your book as far as structure goes is perhaps there is a set of lessons that you've learned. Maybe there's like 5 lessons that you've learned, and the first 3 chapters are on lesson 1, the next 3 chapters are on lesson 2. Whatever it is, you're structuring it based upon the lessons that you've learned and how they interact together. So again, if there's, 3, 4, 5, 10 major lessons that you learned within your story, that could be an organizational method for your book as well. So maybe you tell your story, or you talk about the lesson learned and then share your story. and you move through the book in that manner. So with something like that, your story may not be told chronologically. It might jump around. It might overlap. So that's not necessarily how the book will be held together and organized, but you still need to make sure your readers are not confused and that they're following along, whether or not your story is all over the place or in one straight line. Another way you can look at it is separate parts. Your book can be structured in separate parts. So, for example, you might tell your story in the first part, just story, start to finish, just story. In the second part, you really dive deeply into the lessons and you just really talk about, the extracted lessons from your story, and you don't fold in the story as you go. And then part 3 is additional resources or exercises or more support for your readers. So you have 3 different parts. That type of structure can also be really helpful to fold into each chapter. So let's say you are thinking, okay, I'm going to tell my story chronologically, but within each chapter, I want to tell my story and talk about all these things that I experienced and where I learned these lessons. And then at the end of the chapter, I'm going to bring out, have this section where the lessons are really dove into, and that's where I'll address the readers. So they know every chapter they're going to get story, lessons, story, lessons, story, lessons. And maybe you even have some action steps built in there. Story, lessons, action steps. So every chapter looks the same structurally. The readers will understand what they will be getting within each chapter, or each section or each part. The biggest takeaway that I want you to take away, the biggest lesson I want you to take away is that it does not necessarily matter how you do this, but when you are trying to introduce multiple elements in your book, you need to have some thought about what is the best way to do this that serves your readers and delivers as much value while eliminating confusion, okay? So consistency is very important. Make sure that if you do one thing for one chapter or one part, that you're doing it consistently, okay? Or there is a consistent style of whatever you choose throughout the book. Or, I should say, for example, you're setting it up in the introduction. You are letting the readers know, okay, readers, this is what we're going to do. This is what this book is about. This is how it's going to unfold. This is what you should expect. Because nothing is more painful for a reader than to read a book that they just feel confused and lost with. And probably most books out there that you read, you haven't really felt this. There might be a couple, but as an editor, I see books in their rough stages, and it can be very, very difficult to enjoy it as a reader when it's confusing as far as structure goes. When I'm going like, okay, what just happened here? I thought you were telling the story and now you jumped into over this. And, if it's not structurally thought out, if it's not organized and planned out in a way that your readers can benefit the maximum value from, then they're going to get frustrated along the way. So definitely do not take this task lightly. I want you to think about it. I want you to spend time planning it out. Even if you're like, hey, I'm just going to tell my story from beginning to end chronologically, and I'm going to also share some lessons that I've learned. Maybe you've done some research on some of these topics and you really want to bring to light some particular elements of your story. Great, wonderful, perfect. Make sure you do that in a way the readers are following. Tools like section breaks or headings can be really helpful for the readers visually. You can use different fonts if you want, but I don't think that's as helpful as just saying like, here are the chapter lessons, whatever it is, or a section break just indicates, hey, we're shifting gears. We're shifting away from this. We're doing something different now. So think about that. And also, again, the introduction or preface or something like that can be really helpful when setting your readers up for success. They need to know what they're getting into. And in addition to like a table of contents that just sort of shows the structure, explaining the logic behind the structure will really help the readers go, okay, got it. Thank you for letting me know. I'm on board with you. Let's do this thing. They're going to get it. They're going to jump in and go, okay, I know what to expect. It'll take all the guesswork out, right? So this is one fun little thing that you can explore when looking at, well, what is your book? What is your book? Is your book a personal narrative that just tells a story and illustrates the lessons from there? Or is your book more of a teaching or transformational memoir that has that narrative element, but also has more of a teaching element as well? Either one will help push your mission forward, but there might be a certain style and structure that lends itself to your story and your mission and your purpose the best. So take the time to think about it and then come back here and watch my next video where we're going to continue talking about this big topic. I can't wait to see you there, okay?